Well, folks, it appears that there's a lot going on with the Nintendo Switch 2, and this time it comes directly from Nintendo, who put up a patent, and this patent seems to pertain directly to Nintendo Switch 2 due to things that are referenced within it. Now, we briefly brought up this patent in a prior video, but we didn't dive into all the deep details because, look, reading patents is very, very boring. It's very tedious. It's not fun, and you have to interpret a lot of technical language, but thanks to obviously our ability to read, I can read, of course, and then somebody else, a journalist, breaking down things into easier to understand terminology, we now get a greater understanding of what this patent means and why it's so damn exciting for the Nintendo Switch 2. And honestly, this is going to take the Nintendo Switch 2 to the next level with all the debates over whether or not the chip is 8 nanometers or 5 nanometers and what it means and how powerful it can be. And Tom Warren, a journalist out there, being like, oh, it won't even be as powerful as the PlayStation 4 Pro. Oh boy, this exact technology that's talked about in this patent is exactly why we really don't know how powerful this system is going to look and why it's so important for us to see the games. But what I am more sure about, and you should be as well when we get to the end of this video, is that the Nintendo Switch 2 and Nintendo themselves have perfectly prepared themselves for the modern day gaming experience. So I'm excited to dive into this, but before I do, I want to remind you we're on the road to 140,000 subscribers. Would appreciate if you would subscribe to the channel. Let's go ahead and first initially talk about what this patent is. So this is the patent that got posted on New Year's Eve, and yeah, we talked about this. This is that one that deals with AI upscaling. We briefly looked at this earlier in another video, and there's a lot of stuff in here. The one thing we focused on in that video was this idea of this image that it shows getting upscaled from very small, right here, to this right there, where it keeps all of its detail. But we didn't dive really deep into this patent at the time because it was sort of a toss in at the end of a video. But look, I finally had time to read the patent, and oh boy, it's a lot. And as I was taking notes, somebody pointed out that a journalist had already broken all of this down, and it matches what I read. So we're going to go with what they broke down because I like the way they worded everything, because I think this really makes it understandable. And of course, we're talking about Laura Kate Dale. So she came out here and said, another new patent published yesterday seems to yet again verify claims that Switch 2 will use DLSS style AI upscaling in the NVIDIA chip to improve output resolutions for games. Okay, yeah, right. What a big deal. We already knew that it was going to use DLSS. That's been rumored for a long time and seemingly confirmed. So, okay, what's the big deal then? Well, let's read further. Perhaps the most interesting piece of this, after a lengthy read, is that one example use case given is explicitly to reduce overall game sizes to fit a modern game onto a smaller capacity physical media. Example, Switch carts, which get exponentially more expensive the larger cart capacities. The example given, and this is given in the actual patent, is a game with a native 4K textures might need a 60 gigabyte download, but a 1080 native version may only need 20 gigabytes, which would allow it to fit on a 32 gigabyte Switch cart, the current max size that Nintendo produces for Switch 1. The idea is to be able to do 4 times the upscale on the device in real time. Also of note, all examples given in the patent talk about speeds and accuracy of either 540p upscaled to 1080 or 1080p upscaled to 4K. While I have some issues with PlayStation SSR on PS5, NVIDIA right now are the standard bearers for high quality AI upscaling with DLSS in terms of speed, quality, and ability to work well using low internal resolution. This is all just an opinion, so we're gonna kind of skip over the opinion she gives because DLSS is better than PSSR on PC. I want to be very clear on PC. We're not talking about on Nintendo Switch 2. Switch 2 is not even out yet, right? So we can't make that determination. But there's more in this patent. That's the thing. Like, if you already think about it, that's already crazy in that very clearly the patent's talking about 2 specific targets. Target 540p and upscale to 1080, and then target 1080 and upscale to 4K. You know what that sounds like? Target 540 in handheld, AI upscale to 1080p. Target 1080p in docked mode, upscale to 4K. All right, cool. That seems to be target resolutions for the DLSS or Nintendo's version of this AI upscaler. But here's where we get into the weeds a bit. Laura K. Dale goes on to say this. Okay, I found something else interesting in the Nintendo graphics upscaling patent. Nintendo discusses the following hypothetical use case. No upscaling as default when running on battery power, but upscaling starts either when connected to a larger screen or simply running portably on mains power. So plugged into the wall. You know, some of you guys in handheld might play while it's plugged into the wall, it's charging. You could turn on upscaling at that time, or it would just automatically apply. But it goes even deeper than that. Because as we go down here, it seems from the patent that decreased battery life is the primary factor that would make them default to turning off upscaling. But that could be used in handheld mode if you're, for example, in handheld mode at home on the sofa. So that's the charging situation. However, this is where it's interesting. They also say the following, quote, in certain example embodiments, the user may manually start the process of image up conversion as well, which to me sounds like we might offer the option to upscale even when running on battery if the user opts into that reduced battery time. So what they're saying here, what the patent's inferring is the upscaling, like going from 540 to 1080, may not be enabled by default unless you are plugged into power. However, the user can override that decision and run it on battery and just probably have a warning on screen pop up to say, hey, just so you know, you'll reduce your battery life by X% while playing this game. That makes a lot of sense. That actually puts the onus on the user to decide, hey, do we want to use this upscaling and get better frame rates? Or are we cool with the game running at lower frame rates and maybe lower resolutions and we call it a day? So I do think that that's really cool to put the power in the user's hand where we can decide if we want to go with maximum battery life or if we'd rather have maximum performance but be in handheld mode. I honestly think this is the best of both worlds. I know some of us walk around with battery banks while we're gaming as well, or we put it in grips that have batteries built into them. So I think it's really nice to just have this option out there where the user could decide they want to use it. I mean, you can argue maybe that's what that C button is for. I don't know what they're going to call this, but maybe the C button is to enable upscaling while you're in handheld, or maybe to turn it on and off even in dot mode. I'm just throwing out there, maybe that's what the button's for. Maybe it's an upscaling button. I like that. I like this concept. But here's the thing. There's more in that patent. One last thing that really matters. According to Laura K. Dale here, it says, the more time I spend reading through the presumably switched to graphics upscaling patent, the more clear it becomes. Its big focus seems to be on creating a system that'll smooth out third-party game porting. A big focus is on developers who can provide their own training data images generated from higher internal resolution builds of the game to improve the accuracy of the upscale for their specific game. It very much feels like use the other versions you're making to help train your Switch to upscale. Lots of focus on if you're already making a 4K version of your game, use screenshots of that to help Switch 2 know what it's ideally aiming for to improve the quality of result when we try to upscale your low-resolution Nintendo build. Sounds like they're putting the power in the hands of the third parties to provide select image assets to manually train the AI to upscale their game correctly. That's going to create more accurate upscaling of third-party games. Now, we've talked a long time about how the Nintendo Switch 2 is obviously not going to be as powerful as a PlayStation 5 or an Xbox Series X. And the ideal target probably for the system is 1080p. But that's where the AI upscaling comes into play. With AI upscaling, and when you're in dot mode, the power consumption isn't as big of a deal because you're not running off battery. But the idea here is to provide amazing AI upscaling and give the tools to the game makers to make their AI upscaler specifically upscale their games even better. I love this. I absolutely love what I'm hearing here. Instead of the AI upscaler just guessing, making educated guesses, it can be fed information directly by the developers for their specific game. All of this just sounds utterly amazing to me and exactly what we want from Nintendo Switch 2. We want it to be a modern system, but we have to be realistic. It's using a mobile chipset platform, A78C ARM processors, right? Probably, seems very likely, based on the Ampere architecture or a little bit more. I know there's talks about having some Ada Lovelace features. The point is that it is built on slightly older technology because it is more cost effective and better for mobile purposes, more power efficient. Now, what's really great about all of that is that if the real targets in handheld are really you're targeting 540, but you can upscale to 1080, or you're targeting 1080 in dot mode, but can get a clean quality upscale to 4K, that's how Nintendo Switch 2 punches above its weight. We've talked for a long time about how we really feel as Nintendo fans that DLSS is going to feel like a magic button, but we didn't really have an understanding of what that meant other than, oh, it'll just upscale stuff. But this makes it show, or at least shows a clear dedication by Nintendo that they are dedicated to using this technology both internally and for third parties. This is Nintendo's solution on Nintendo Switch 2 to make things work. Now, I want to be clear that obviously this patent being out now before the Nintendo Switch 2 is officially unveiled could mean that they're not going with this particular, like this exact DLSS, this exact solution for AI upscaling. They could be using an alternative version. That happens a lot where Nintendo puts out these patents and it's very clearly something they're going to be doing or are doing, but maybe they're not doing it in this exact way. They could be using an alternative form of this patent. It's also possible maybe the system was planned to come out in 2024, so when this was being published on December 31st, Nintendo thought Switch 2 would already be out, let alone already be revealed, but then it was, supposedly internally delayed. Again, conflicting reports on that, but what I can tell you guys is there's going to absolutely be upscaling. Nintendo's already using upscaling. FSR 1.0 is used in games like Nintendo Switch Sports. Now that is software-based upscaling versus what we're going to get with NVIDIA, which is going to be hardware-based upscaling, hence why you can see Nintendo worrying about battery life because, yeah, it's going to cost more battery life to run more hardware to run those RT cores, so then you can end up getting that upscaling. So putting that power, though, in the hands of the users, to me, sounds like the perfect solution. Let us decide as the gamers if we want to lessen our battery life to get better performance. I think that is perfectly reasonable, and I truly think that this shows Nintendo has a very, very good modern understanding of the concerns and needs of gamers, third-party companies, and obviously what they want to do internally. Now, we still don't know the base clocks of the system. With some of the leaks out there, we can pretty much figure out it's got 12 gigs of RAM and 256 gigabytes of internal storage, and that's all great, but obviously now we just need Nintendo to reveal it. This is just really great news for how games are going to look and perform on the system and how it can modernize itself. You start to think, hey, if the target for something like Assassin's Creed Shadows actually, we just want this to be a 1080p game, not a 4K, but a 1080p game on Switch 2, that suddenly sounds way more feasible. And then you use modern hardware-based upscaling techniques to make it feel like it's as good as all the other versions out there. Honestly, folks, this is the way. And I think when we see the games from Nintendo, it's going to clearly show that this is the future rather than always just pushing for maximum power individual components all the time in consoles. Remember, the idea of consoles originally was to be an affordable, easy way to play games. I obviously have a really expensive gaming PC I play on as well, and I really enjoy games on that. That's always going to be a thing. But even that, with my 4080 Super, I use DLSS in my games too for better performance. Anyways, guys, thank you so much for tuning in. I am Nathaniel Rebel Jans from Nintendo Prime, and I'll catch each and every one of you in the next video.